investigating the murder of Sandra Collins on the 4th to the 5th of December 2000 are now seeking additional information in relation to her death. Sandra was 28 years of age when she disappeared. She was last seen on George Street in Killala on the 4th of December 2000. People's circumstances may have changed. You may have been under pressure or anxious at the time of the investigation. Please make contact with Gardish Corner in whatever way you can.
I'd like to appeal to anyone that's out there today that knows where Sandra is to please come forward and please give us back our sister, because after 20 years we deserve to have her back and to give her the Christian burial that she deserves. I can't describe the pain and the torture that the last 20 years have been on the rest of me and the rest of the family. We miss her every day. It's time now. It's time to bring Sandra home. And it's time to end this pain. I cannot do it without you. I need you.
You're very welcome. Mick Rooney here, investigative journalist, Radio Espial, www.radioespial.com. It's very likely you're watching this feature on episode, where are we, 39, on YouTube. Thanks again, as always, to my recent subscribers. If you're new to the channel, you're very welcome. We'll put up these usual details, the usual run of the mill, subscribe and share. That's it, we're done with that. You're not going to see that again. You've seen the intro, you know where we are. The Sandra Collins murder case. There's a lot in this. Let's get straight on with it. I'm going to read through the background of this case, and I'm hoping for future episodes you're going to hear an awful lot more from the families of missing people, murdered people, in my episodes, in their own voice, to tell the story. And that's very much a feature of this episode. I wanted it that way. Apologies, I meant to get this episode out last week. There were just other pieces that myself and Kieran needed to put in place to have this together to go with. But without further ado, Kieran will be with us shortly when we get into the timeline. If you're new, that's what we do here. That's what you're watching. You're watching a deep dive into the timeline of the Sandra Collins murder case. Sandra Collins was 28 years old when she went missing from Killala, County Mayo, Ireland, on Monday the 4th of December 2000. She is the eldest of 6 children in her family. She was born to Eleanor and Francie, who also had James and Bridie together. Francie, her father, died in 1978, and Eleanor remarried Joe Collins in the mid-1980s. They went on to have Patrick, David and Mary together, and you'll be hearing an awful lot from Patrick, David and Mary, Sandra's siblings. The family experienced an early tragedy. Sandra's younger brother James was killed in a workplace accident just 6 months before she disappeared. Her mother Eleanor passed away, not knowing what happened to her daughter. Sandra moved from her family home in Crossmolina at 16 years of age, temporarily to care for her aunt, but weeks became months and she soon became a full carer career. At the time of her disappearance, she was still living with her aunt at Courthouse Street, Killala. She left her aunt's house at 7:30 p.m. to buy groceries, calling in on their elderly neighbour William Johnson to see if he needed anything from the shop. It has never been determined where Sandra was between 7:45 p.m. after a visit to Baran's grocery shop and the last sighting of her at around 11:15 p.m. This was in the Country Kitchen chip shop on George Street, Killala, buying some chips. When she disappeared, Sandra was wearing black boots, black pants, a beige sleeveless top, and a maroon beige sleeveless fleece jacket. On Saturday the 9th of September 2000, her fleece jacket was found on the pier at Killala Harbour. Tucked into the pocket of her fleece were the sausages she had bought earlier at Boran's grocery shop on the evening of her disappearance. It is known that Sandra spent long periods in a local phone box in Killala, making and possibly receiving a number of phone calls. Witnesses reported seeing her somewhat agitated and upset throughout the evening, but her exact movements, who she was with between 7:45 and 11:15 p.m. and thereafter, remains uncertain. Although her body has never been found, Sandra's family believe she was murdered and that some people must know who killed her. They also believe her fleece jacket was placed at the pier to make it look like she had taken her life. Her siblings have kept their promise to their father, Joe, to continue the search for Sandra and to give her a dignified burial. In 2010, her missing person case was upgraded to murder by Irish police. Let's take our first of many family inserts, and then we're going to get into the deep dive on the timeline, and Kieran will be joining us.
Sandra was lovely. She was kind. She was caring. You know, she was kind of, her being the oldest, I suppose, if we fell or got hurt or anything, she'd be like a bit of a little mother, you know, in her. And, like, just really kind and a very caring person.
She was kind, she was funny, she was smart. By God, she was competitive. Sandra was the oldest, so then James, Bridie, myself, then David, and then Mary.
I remember standing on the side of the pier and the sub-aqua team were diving, were searching for her. I was looking at them and looking at the water, and I thought, oh my God, please let them not find her. Let them not bring up her body. But I didn't think back then that 21 years later we'd be still looking for her. Never ever thought that, no.
Okay, Kieran McConnell is joining us now from Irish Cold Cases and Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. Kieran, as always, you're very welcome. This case, Sandra Collins. Initial thoughts?
Yeah, how's it going, Mick? Thanks for having me back on. Another tough one. I remember the case. I think the first I heard about it was actually Sandra's sister, Mary Collins Dempsey. I think I heard her on the radio talking about it. I think that would have been nearly 23 years ago. And it's in a very small town out in Mayo. I think it's very odd.
Killala, yeah.
Altogether that it hasn't been solved. Yeah. So, and like, fair play to Mary Collins Dempsey, because she really has kept this one out.
Terrific work. Herself, Patrick, and all the family. And you're going to hear names like Mary, Sandra's sister, Patrick, and other siblings mentioned as we go through this timeline. You've heard me mention some of them earlier. Kieran, let's just get straight into it. Yeah.
There'll be a lot on this one, Mick. I think you'll have.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Okay, let's go. We're going to start the timeline, and we're going to start it in November 1988. Age 16, Sandra has left school very young and does not complete secondary school education. Her family describe her as strong-minded, competitive, brave, and yet foolish sometimes, with a wild streak. But behind it all, she's still young, kind, and quiet, and vulnerable. She moves from her family home to take on a full-time carer role for her aunt, which is her father's sister, Anne O'Grady, who suffers with severe arthritis. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm not saying this because it's my opinion or Kieran's opinion. This is well established in family interviews. There's no sugarcoating here. Sandra's family have made it clear in multiple interviews that they considered Anne, the aunt, demonstrative, controlling, and quite a difficult woman to get on with. She could easily play upon Sandra's kindness and good nature, and very much ruled the household that Sandra Collins at a young age had moved to. We're going to hear a little bit about that and a little bit more from the siblings in this next insert, and we're going to regularly do this throughout this timeline. So let's listen to that family insert.
Our aunt had arthritis, and it was in the summer. We were on the summer holidays from school, and she said she'd go down and stay with her for a couple of weeks. But then the couple of weeks turned into a couple of months, and she ended up staying there then. But I suppose the compassionate side in them, Mum would have felt that Anne needed Sandra more maybe than she did.
Oh, Sandra didn't finish school. She became a full-time carer for Anne.
Sandra told us often that she missed us, that she missed Mum and Dad, and she missed the whole home environment and everything like that. But she felt that she'd be letting Anne down if she left her, and who was going to mind her, who was going to take the responsibility on.
Now, in late spring 1998, so we're 10 years on, Sandra had been living with her ailing aunt Anne for 10 years. She discovers that she's pregnant. This will be a challenge for both of them, but her wider family are supportive. However, within weeks of the birth, Sandra concludes that she cannot provide the stability and environment a newborn child needs. Her controlling aunt is already uncomfortable with a demanding infant in the household, despite family who suggest that she just leave her aunt's house in Killala with her young child. Sandra instead decides to place her child into foster care and long-term adoption after 6 months. At the time, many of Sandra's friends are younger than her in the area. Some of them are still in their late teenage years. And it's important to note that Sandra did not grow up or in school in the Killala community. And her family sensed she was becoming more isolated, seeing her at most once a week on Sundays with her aunt for family gatherings. Again, going to take another quick audio clip from the family.
I would say she gave up the best years of her life as such. I mean, her teenage years, where you be experiencing life, school, friendships, normal teenage things, and going into her adult life as well.
The two of them came up every Sunday night. I think she just put on a brave face. She said a story that, to keep us happy and to not have us worrying about her, but I don't think she was happy now.
They were probably the happiest times, to be honest, is when she came up to see her family.
And ruled the roost, and that was basically it. She said jump and Sandra went how high.
She wanted to be in control all the time, and she probably felt very insecure that one day Sandra would maybe meet somebody and start her own life and leave her, and then who was going to look after her and who was going to mind her. So I presume there was a lot of fear as well in her life.
She was very controlling and very domineering, and told her what she could do and when she could do it, even when she was in her 20s.
She told us she was pregnant, and I suppose when I was 22, she was 26, so I hadn't I had no children. I was married, but I had no family myself. So I was excited and I wanted to be looking forward to being an auntie. And then I was with her the day that she delivered her baby. Sandra was a good mum and she loved her baby, but it was just, she said that as the time was going by and didn't want a baby in the house. So then she just felt that it wasn't the right place to be bringing up a baby. It was a big loss to us all when she gave the baby away. Sandra explained it as best she could that it was just something she had to do.
She wanted her baby to grow up in a world that we grew up in. A family structure that Sandra couldn't, unfortunately, provide.
June the 6th, 2000. Sandra's brother James is working nights at a water cooler manufacturing facility in Ballina, County Mayo. His leg becomes trapped in a machine. Tragically, he dies before reaching hospital. And the family are going to talk a little bit about that in this next audio insert.
Her brother James, who was 2 years younger than Sandra, he got killed. He fell into a machine and he got his leg cut off, and we were woken in the middle of the night to tell us that unfortunately James had died.
When it all came out about what had actually gone on that night, when we were older, it really, especially myself and I know the boys, it really upset us. We were so young. We were 9, 10 and 13. And it was just horrific to think that he was all alone in a machine, didn't know whether he was going to die or not. And it was one of the worst nights of our lives.
Friday to Sunday, which would have been December the 1st to the 3rd, 2000. Now, during this period, Sandra had it confirmed that she is pregnant for a second time. She visited her local doctor on the Friday for a pregnancy test. She and her aunt travelled by car to meet on Sunday evening at the family home. This is a regular weekly visit and catch up. It's her sister Bridie's birthday, but she happens to be out at another event at the time. Family members learn of Sandra's new pregnancy. As a traditional Irish family, they are again reassuring and supportive, but they still have concerns as to how she will cope with this news for a second time. I'm not going to dwell too much on this image. It's the general area of Mayo, Killala Quay, the areas around. You can pause and take a look at this if we mention any areas, because we're significantly mentioning places like Georgia Street in the timeline, Killala Quay and the harbour further up, and in particular Courthouse Street, which is lower down towards the bottom left, which is actually the area, the general area where Sandra lived with her aunt Anne. Now, Monday, December the 4th, 2000, this is the day of the incident. During the morning, Sandra speaks to the doctor's clinic she attended on the previous Friday. And for a second time, she has it formally confirmed by phone that she is indeed pregnant. Subsequently, evidence is provided in a book of court evidence that a local doctor clinic contacted Sandra, and again the pregnancy is confirmed with a second test result on the day she went missing. She had also been making phone calls to England on the same day with a view to getting an abortion there. But this seems counter to Sandra and her family's religious views. What is known of her exact movements on this day can only be recounted from her Aunt Anne she lived and cared for. Her whereabouts is not known until that evening, but it does not appear she left her house until around 7:50 p.m. in the evening. Kieran, at this stage, early developments.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. It's already kind of a tragic story for someone so young. Like,
Yeah.
Like, it's very
and taking on so much at such a young age, from the age of 16. And I mean, she was with her Aunt Anne. We're like 10 years. That is tough. And she was, and let me just clarify in case, what did she work or what? She was a full-time paid carer.
But that's every
for
hour
her
of
aunt.
the day.
You know, she had an allowance. She wasn't just doing this out of goodwill. That was her general, how she earned money, looking after the aunt full-time.
And you really get the sense of isolation from the story, that like she was kind of isolated from the rest of her family, and where she lived was in itself isolated, you know.
Yeah, but Killala is by no means a mecca, thriving area for a young lady through her developing teenage years into her early 20s. This would have been pretty tough going for her, however she coped, and we don't know the full details, but that's difficult. I suppose it's difficult to form long-term friendships and have a friend circle as much as she tried. And also
sorry, Mick, but at that age you're kind of like, you kind of dream of the future a lot, like in your late teens, early 20s or whatever, like, you know, God knows what she thought, like, you know.
Yeah, you don't quite have the same freedoms that your other friends have.
No.
You're constantly trying to carve out time for yourself. If you're caring for somebody full time, anybody in that area knows, if you're living at a home with somebody as a full-time carer, it is from the time that person wakes up to the time that person that you're caring for goes to bed. And not just that, but in the times they're disturbed in their sleep, they wake up, oh God, what's she doing? Where's she going? You know, it is 24-hour care that she was taking on, and that's tough for a woman of that age. And with no, and you could probably reflect on this from the areas you've worked in. That's tough for somebody that has no proper professional training as a caregiver.
No, like, you know, you should just have to learn as she goes on the job. And sometimes, in a sense, like, it's actually it's more difficult when it's a relative, like, you know. It's like, for many reasons, I suppose, like, sometimes people are less likely to actually listen to their relatives than they are to strangers, especially in situations like that. Like, so you just always go back to her age, like, it's so young, like, all that stuff to take on, like.
Yeah. Okay, look, we're still at December the 4th, 2000. We're at 6 to 7:30 p.m. We're going to go through the events that we understand, and a lot of this is through Anne O'Grady, her aunt. Sandra showers and puts on some makeup. She's going out. She tells her aunt Anne that she is going out to pick up some groceries. This is also confirmed when she calls into an elderly neighbour, William Johnson, to see if he needed anything from the local shop, Beran's. However, it is not believed that Sandra returned home directly from Beran's shop. In fact, a missing timeline of more than 3.5 hours begins sometime after 7:45 p.m. And it's important to note, at this time, 2000, you know, because people will later ask if we don't clarify this, Sandra didn't drive, and she didn't have a mobile phone in the year 2000.
And there wouldn't be much CCTV there at that time.
No, and certainly very limited, and very, in modern terms, whatever CC there would have been in that area would have been pretty limited, and, well, in today's terms, you know, primitive, you know. 11:10 to 11:15 p.m. Sandra is last seen just after 11 p.m. in a chip shop at Georgia Street, remember that map, in Killala village, known at the time as the Country Kitchen Chip Shop. She buys a large portion of chips, more than enough for 2 people, and departs the premises. The staff member recalled to Gardaí later that Sandra was a frequent customer and would often eat her chips within the small restaurant sit-down area. Excuse me. Sometimes never fully finishing her single portion of chips. She thought it odd that night that Sandra ordered so much and left straight away. Outside, we checked the weather forecast for that night. It's cold and it's a wintry night. It is not a pleasant night to be outside. Continued spells of intermittent and heavy rainfall. Sandra never returned home to her aunt's house. The following day, Tuesday the 5th of December 2000, Sandra has still not returned home, but throughout the day her Aunt Anne and other family members continue to exchange phone calls, and they become increasingly concerned about her whereabouts. At 12:30 p.m. on that Tuesday, Anne, the aunt, phones Sandra's sister Bridie Conway, after she married Bridie Nee Collins, at a workplace in the early afternoon, and tells her that she had waited up all the previous night, but Sandra had still not returned home. Sandra's mum and dad, Eleanor and Joe, along with Bridie, drive to Anne's house in Killala later that day. At 7 p.m, this is the evening, the family members contact local Gardaí and report Sandra missing. Gardaí arrive at Anne O'Grady's home and take details. Anne recounts to the police that the previous evening Sandra had left the house at 7 p.m. to buy sausages for both of them to have for tea. Gardaí speak to a neighbour, William Johnson, and a plumber who was working at his house, house number 9, Courthouse Street. Anne O'Grady's house, the aunt, was at number 8 Courthouse Street. They confirmed that Sandra had asked them if they needed something at the local shop, and they confirmed that she did return and drop in what they asked her to get. She hands William and the plumber their change and receipt from the local shop. However, Sandra does not call into her aunt's house at number 8 next door. So there's a row of 12 cottages on Courthouse Street at the time, it has changed since, in Killala, where Sandra lives, but none of the other neighbours report seeing Sandra that evening. We're going to take a family insert now, and this is Bridie and Mary speaking.
I finished work that evening and I went home and I made contact with my aunt, and it was 7 o'clock at that stage then. So I was a little bit, I just thought, well, it's not really like you know, to stay out this long without making contact. Like that, she wouldn't have wanted Anne to be worrying. So myself then and my dad and mum went down to Killala to her aunt, and she told us what had happened, that she'd left and she hadn't come back. And of course we asked, had they had a row, or, you know, was there any words or anything? And she said no, everything was fine. As far as she was concerned, she was just gone down to get the groceries and would be back. You know, we didn't want to do it, but Mum said it should, you know, maybe we should do it, like, just in case she'd be in any place that she'd be in danger or anything.
At the start, we were told that she'd just gone on a holiday, and Mum and Dad didn't want to worry us. So we knew that there was something going on, but they said, oh, Sandra just went off. Just on a little holiday and she'll be back. So just to put our mind at ease.
Sandra's siblings. Wednesday to Friday, December the 6th to the 7th, after interviewing family members, Gardaí considered the possibility that Sandra, aware of her pregnancy, the pressures of being a home carer, has simply taken some time out to herself. Family and Gardaí alerts began, and there are limited searches of the village. Soon, a more full-scale search will begin of the harbour waters and wider village areas after 48 hours of the known disappearance. On Saturday the 9th of December 2000, there's a breakthrough. A beige fleece jacket is found discarded on Killala Pier. This had not been located on any previous searches of the pier in recent days. The first clear items in the case beyond the identified fleece jacket are also found. The sausages are found in one pocket and two pieces of paper in another pocket with handwritten phone contact numbers. One, an abortion clinic in England, and also a private number of an unnamed local man. Family members identified the handwriting as Sandra's. Gardaí considered the possibility that Sandra has taken her own life, but the reappearing fleece jacket 5 days later from her initial disappearance seems to compound that theory. They also considered the possibility that Sandra had fled to England for an abortion, but all checks on her movements and the clinic listed led nowhere. It was increasingly clear with the new discovered evidence that there's something more sinister to Sandra's disappearance. Kieran, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so like in December in the west of Ireland, there's no way a fleece jacket can stay on a pier for 5 days. It'd be blown to halfway to Canada, like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It would have ended in the water. That's it. Forget it. Like,
yeah, that's bizarre. Like, that's like you just think what to make of that. But another thing is very strange. How come she dropped the groceries home to the neighbour and not the aunt's
that's
house? Like,
only one thing I've heard more recently, and I'm glad I delayed this case from doing it last week, because that's one detail I hadn't been aware of. Because I did question that. Well, okay, maybe if she didn't come back, was it the reason? I suppose we're looking at motive here, and I'm talking about motive from Sandra's perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm asking myself, was the real reason she wanted it? Perfectly understandable. Wanted to just get out and have her own time that evening, and the idea of just picking up groceries was a last thought. Yet she still was kind enough to call into a neighbour and ask, "Hey, William, gone up to the grocery shop, Baran's. Do you want that?" And the plumber said, "Oh yeah, could you get us this?" Or, "Oh yeah, get us that." And she actually took the time to go back with their change and give them the groceries, but she never went back to her own home.
No, just one thought. I remember when you were saying at the start that the aunt could be quite difficult. Maybe she just didn't want to go into the house and avoid her.
And just wanted her own time. That wanted 2 or 3 hours that evening for her own space and time. But as we get into this more, maybe there was things also going on in Sandra's mind that day. December the 20th, 2000. Unknown at the time to many family and friends, via phone, Sandra had already made an appointment with an abortion clinic in England on this date. She will never fulfill that appointment. She made the date for December the 20th, 2000. She disappeared on December the 4th. We're going to hear more about the find of that fleece from Bridie, I think David, Mary and Patrick.
The guards rang and said that they had found her fleece on the pier in Killala, and would I come in to identify it to make sure that it was hers, like. So I went in and identified it. Couldn't understand how nobody else found it, because even when the searches weren't done, me and Mum and Dad and the family, we were up and down to Killala, and we were over and back at the pier. And we never seen it, like, and we'd know it. We'd know it the minute we'd see it, we'd know it was hers, like. I thought that maybe somebody might have done something. and then come back with the fleece and left the fleece at the pier to make it look like suicide or something like that. Now that was, in the early days, that was put out there that she could have committed suicide. But like knowing her the way we knew her, we couldn't ever imagine.
You know, you would say, oh, fleece was found on the pier. Brother was dead 6 months. You know, she's given away the baby. And, you know, her life wasn't great. We're not naive in thinking that, oh, no, that no one ever spoke about it. Of course. I mean, it was put out there. But as I said, from our point of view as a family, no. It just didn't sit in with the way that Sandra was to us.
For Mum, it was really hard. Really, really hard, naturally enough. She'd lost her son 6 months beforehand, her brother James. And then we knew, like, you know, Christmas was going to be hard, but then when Sandra went before Christmas, it was just so hard. You know, and they tried to keep spirits up for us because we were small. But you could always tell there was something. Somebody was missing. But even looking back now, I look at Mum, and she was so strong that year, and for all of us, she was.
We went from being children and adolescents to being adults.
June the 28th, 2001. In a statement taken by the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the NBCI, into the disappearance of Sandra Collins, a publicly unnamed man recounts that he knew Sandra and that in late 2000 they entered a sexual liaison on at least 2 occasions. But the man states that he last saw Sandra on December the 1st of 2000, so a few days before she disappeared. He signs the statement and denies any involvement in her disappearance. Sadly, in 2004, Sandra's mother, Eleanor Collins, passes away. However, the open missing file in the disappearance of Sandra will remain that, a missing person case. But that changes in 2010. The case is upgraded to murder. A GSCR, which is a unit that reviews like cold cases or cases that maybe have gone stale or there's no development in it, they begin to review Sandra's case from 2010 through 2012, over 2 years. Led by retired Detective Superintendent Peter O'Boyle, they re-examined the evidence and immediately recommended it be upgraded to a murder case in July 2010. They concluded that there was no proof of life, which is a very important instinct and detection in legal and criminal cases, a no proof of life, and Sandra was declared dead. While it came as a shock to the family, deep down they knew Sandra was not coming home. Case resources are increased. The family cooperate in a Gardaí national TV crime call appeal in December 2010, and a number of witnesses come forward again to alter or add to their original statements. The criminal investigation begins to shift and focus on a series of people in the Mayo area, and a suspect list is soon narrowed down. 2011-2012, Gardaí make a number of arrests into the disappearance of Sandra Collins and forward a file to the Irish DPP, the Department of Public Prosecution. So we know they're now moving towards a definite line of inquiry. Kieran?
Yeah, thanks, Mick. Just one thing actually jumped out at me there. If you compare the case, say, to Annie McCurrick, like that took 30 years to get upgraded to murder. In this case, like they upgraded it very quickly, didn't they?
They did.
I wonder what that was.
Well, yeah. Where are we? 2000. This case is to 20. So yeah. 10 years later, they upgraded it. Some people might argue, "Oh, that was too long," but in relative
Ireland,
terms, when you
that's
don't actually have any definitive evidence or a definitive suspect, that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
And you don't have a found person who was missing. That's a significant step to upgrade.
But I wonder what grounds they actually upgraded on. I wonder, was there like an inquest, or I wonder what they used actually.
Do you know what?
Take the murder
Do you know,
charge to the DPP.
I'm not even going to comment on it. I don't know whether there was an inquest.
No.
Perhaps there was. I don't know. So I'm not going to give anything definitive on that.
No, anyway, yeah. Well.
Okay, so things are really escalating now in this case. You'll see from the visuals. On Thursday, December the 27th, 2012. So we're a little over, 12 years on from the case. Suspect X, age 48, is arrested, interviewed once again, and for the first time formally charged with murder at 4:55 p.m. in the late afternoon. He's a plasterer and sometime construction worker, married and a father of three children, who has more recently spent time in England working there. He had just returned from England to family for the Christmas holidays. Friday, December the 28th, 2012. Suspect X appears before Ballina District Court at 7:40 p.m. Mayo, charged with the murder of Sandra Collins. 2 years will pass, and after 4 years of investigation, Subject X, previously arrested in December 2012, comes before the Central Criminal Court in Castlebar, Mayo, charged with the murder of Sandra Collins. He was a slightly older man than Sandra at the time, 2000, but recently known to Sandra and locals in the Killala area. A web of circumstances is beginning to unfold about what actually happened to Sandra Collins on the night of December the 4th, 2000, and what led up to her death. Kieran, before I get into because we're now really going to start getting into disclosure here and details of the trial and stuff that came out, is there anything you want to say before we go into that?
No, just that I suppose not really, because like I kind of know some things about the trial.
Obviously, we've both worked on this case, so we know what's coming up, and obviously I'm just saying that for the point of view, if you wanted to add on, obviously.
No, I think the guy would have been, if my maths is right, I think he would have been 34 years of age, around
34, 36, yeah, years, roughly, if I'm right, 8-10 years older than Sandra at the time, I think. Okay, well, let's review what happened at the trial. We're at June the 5th, 2014. A 50-year-old construction worker, married with children at the time, accused of murdering Sandra Collins, was freed after being acquitted by a jury under the instructions of a judge. Martin Early, Banagher, Carrickmore, Lacken, Ballina, had been on trial for 17 days at the Central Criminal Court sitting in Castlebar, County Mayo, for the murder of Sandra Collins, Courthouse Street, Killala, at a place and date unknown on or about December the 4th, 2000. Mr. Justice Patrick McCarthy told the 12-person jury that there was insufficient evidence to convict and directed them to find the accused not guilty without the trial going to jury. In his words, Judge McCarthy, "For legal reasons, ladies and gentlemen, I am directing you to acquit the accused." Suspect X admitted in statements to Gardaí to having a sexual relationship with Sandra in the previous weeks to her death, but denied killing her. During the trial, Michael Greenahan, a civil engineer and case witness, told the jury that Martin Early stayed with him overnight on March the 23rd, 2011, after ringing him and telling him he was in trouble. Mr. Greenan gave evidence that when Martin Early rang him that day, He sounded very panicky and sounded like he had a few beers. The witness continued. He said he was in trouble and I could help him. It sounded like he was having a few problems with himself and his wife. Mr. Granahan went on to recount how he collected Martin Early in Ballycastle and brought him to his Mr. Greenan's uncle's house, where he was very stressed and vomited. He said he told Early to get his head down for the night, and the following morning he went to his bedroom to see if he was all right. While they were in the bedroom, Early told him that he was in big trouble, and it was to do with the lady that had gone missing in Killala. Mr. Granahan stated to the court, I said he needed to go home and sort himself out and go and see the guards. He said Early then revealed that he had been with Sandra Collins on the night she disappeared, and they had gone to the pier in Killala together. Mr. Granahan continued. He said there was an argument and that she fell into the water. She got out of the car apparently very erratically and stepped back away from the car and fell in. He said that when asked why he had not jumped in to get Sandra Collins out of the water, Early told him that he could not swim. He also said it was dark at the time. Mr. Granahan said he told the accused he should have rung the guards at the time. He also told him to sort things out with his wife and go to the police station and also to his solicitor. Cross-examined by Micheál O'Higgins, the witness said Martin Early struck him as a good father, good with the kids. I never saw him being violent with anyone. He went on, I believed that Martin Early was telling the truth that she fell in. In a statement of June the 28th, 2001, Early explained that he'd been in something of a relationship with Sandra. He confirmed that the last occasion they met was on December the 1st, 2000, when they had sex in Early's Toyota Hiace van. He stated that he had got to know Sandra Collins socially in late 2000. One night they kissed and cuddled in an alleyway after he walked her home from a pub. Sandra initially believed he was single, but she later told him she knew he was married. On December the 1st, they left the pub separately, but went to Early's van in the centre, which was known as Ward's, car park. We got into the van and had sex, but this, I mean full sexual intercourse. This was the second occasion that we had full intercourse. I always wore a condom, his statement said. Martin Early conceded in his 2001 statement that he did speak to Sandra on the phone on the day of Monday, December the 4th. This was the day of her disappearance. She said she had something to tell me, that she was in a bit of trouble, that she was expecting a baby for about 2 months and that it had nothing to do with him, Early. She asked for a few pounds and she did not want to go through another pregnancy and said that she would need about £1,000. I was shocked because she never told me she was pregnant and I didn't take her request for money as a threat. She simply asked me for help and I would help her to a certain extent. Earlier, he said that he lied to Gardaí in a bid to protect his marriage. Following the trial, suspect X moved back to the UK. Kieran?
Yeah, no, very good, Mick. That's a great summary of the trial. I was wondering, I think I remember reading, I wonder if you can confirm this, but the way the judge kind of ruled on the case, it means that that you're an Early, that he can be retried for this crime. Like, it's not like...
I believe so, because it didn't go to jury. And I'm still trying to quite ascertain specifically what was the evidence and nature that he decided that there was insufficient evidence. Okay, let me explain that a little bit. A judge in a case thinks very carefully. Once a trial goes to jury, they think very seriously and carefully about suggesting any kind of abandonment, misruling of the case, or directing, in this case, an instruction to the jury. You must find this person not guilty, full stop. No questions asked. That's my direction. We simply record that verdict. That takes an awful lot for a judge to do. I don't know the full details of why. Usually, I want to stress here, I'm talking in general, I'm not specifically talking about this case. But usually when that happens, it may be because a piece of evidence or something that was relied upon, recorded in the book of evidence and presented during that trial, has later found to be at fault or should never have admissible. And it seems in this case something was presented or within the book of evidence that should not have been there. It may have been a technical reason, dates of an arrest. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, because like I suppose in this case, like you can make a guess because there is no body found or whatever. Unfortunately, that there's no chain of custody with evidence, so there'd be nothing. I don't think.
Well, the fleece, and I suppose any limited CCTV they would have had. Although I'm certainly not aware of any CCTV coverage in this case, other than our witnesses.
Yeah, and I'd be fairly shocked because I think the guards, like, it took them years to actually build this case. So it would be there's no way they botched the arrest or anything like that. Like, I wouldn't have thought after building up like the case for so long they're going to do that. Like, so I don't know. You just don't know.
It seems to me to hinge an awful lot around what some people might argue is hearsay. This witness said this, he said this to me, and not I saw this, but he said, she said, and it's possibly surrounding that, and possibly, I don't know, the basis of how that witness report was gathered, administrated, I don't know, but there's clearly something crucial in this case that was included in the court case that is later now found not to be admissible, and that makes it more difficult for a future case, because either you have to come back with even more evidence, or you have to clarify why you can readmit any evidence that was discarded initially in this case. And that it seemes to be that's where we are with this case.
See, you just wouldn't know on the judge. Like, the judge might like possess like a personal feeling on this, that like the case, the murder trial shouldn't be before him without a body. Like, you know,
it could surround that, and he felt that that witness statements simply weren't enough. But we have had convictions where a body hasn't been found. We literally have had murder convictions where a body hasn't been found. So this isn't quite so extraordinary, but he clearly felt that the evidence didn't meet the standard of conviction without a body, based only on primarily witness statements, the fleece. I've never heard of any forensic detail linking the accused, and let's be blunt, you might not like me saying this, everybody listening to this, but every defendant deserves a fair trial. No one wants to see anybody be convicted based on loose or fragile evidence, unless it's convincing and compellable, and clearly the judge felt there was not sufficient evidence to convict in this case, and it happened within the trial, which is very difficult for the family.
No, it would be interesting, I suppose, in a sense, to see if there was ever a civil case, because, you know, it's a lower bar for proof in a civil case. If so, what will come out in that, but you hope will eventually be another criminal case or whatever brought before the courts.
Okay, we're going to move to our first of all we're going to take an insert, an audio insert. This is I think this is coming up here. This is RT radio. This was the breaking news that the case had collapsed. So let's take a listen to that, and then we're going to go to our conclusions and analysis.
Couldn't imagine seeing somebody who could have done something to my sister and be in the same room as that person. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. So I think it was just this strength going. I just thought, I'm doing it for Sandra because she needs us to do this for her. She needs a voice, and by God, we'll all be there to look this person in the eye. And my father was the exact same way, and I think we all were the same way. We wanted to be there as a family to represent Sandra.
It's the news at 1 on RTE Radio 1. Next we go to the Central Criminal Court, which has been sitting in Castlebar, where a County Mayo man who had been on trial for the murder of missing woman Sandra Collins has dramatically walked free.
So I sat there and I heard people going, no. And for a couple of minutes I didn't know kind of what was going on, and then I realised, oh my God, it's not going to go any further.
Okay, conclusions and analysis. This is a classic case, I think, of a murder which lacks the evidence and exact circumstance to bring it to a full conclusion. A case, even though underwritten and got a go-ahead from the DPP, Department of Public Prosecutions, you have to be certain that the evidence will go to the trial and jury. Justice Patrick McCarthy was clear in his assessment of evidence. We have a victim, deceased and murdered, a prime suspect, reason and motive, but the case lacked the admissible forensic and detailed evidence to place both suspect and Sandra in the same place at the same time at the moment of a crime. And we also do not have a discovered body, which would have delivered far more evidence. I think from my truncated timeline, people will say it's longer than we expected. You will quickly gather why this case ultimately fell apart. It's never enough to establish a connection between victim and perpetrator, reason and motive. It has to be proven by evidence in conjunction with witness statements. It isn't enough to have a hunch or a suspect or to speculate what might or might not have happened. We have a huge gaping gap, a hole in evidence timeline between 7:45 and 11:15 p.m. Sandra wasn't putting on makeup to pick up groceries at the local shop. She was meeting someone that night, confronted with the circumstances of her life. She had confirmed to her that day. She didn't want another repeat of firstborn. Her plans, intentions and contact phone numbers were in her fleece jacket pocket. It's clear who she was with during that time. If Sandra's intention was to simply leave her aunt's house solely to purchase groceries, calling into an elderly neighbour as well, why did she not return to her aunt's house after dropping off groceries to William Johnson at house number 9? The reason to leave her aunt's house for groceries seems more an excuse or ruse to persuade her difficult aunt, and real purpose was to meet someone and address her newfound circumstance. The later deposit of the fleece jacket on the pier was clearly a clumsy attempt by person or persons unknown to create or imply the possibility of a suicide scenario. Not a single witness recounts that Sandra was wet or out in exposed weather in all their sightings of her. She was clearly, during those 3.5 hours, in someone else's abode or in a car, sheltered with someone known to her. Martin Early confided in a witness that he was with Sandra on the evening of her disappearance, that there was some form of accident where she exited the car and she fell from the pier side into the water. I can find no reason why witness Michael Grenihan would insert himself into this serious case and what gain he would have for inventing such an account. We are again at a place where the community knows and hides a suspect killer. But pride, relationships and village whispers see that killer escape any responsibility. Now, I've done my best in this timeline to let the Collins family tell their story in their own words. Kieran, do you want to add any last thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Mick. It just I remember when you were talking there, it kind of made me think back to the Kira Breen case, and obviously she was never found, but I think the guards were, if they ever found the body, there would definitely be a conviction, and they'd know who to convict.
Yeah.
And you'd have to wonder if that's the same situation in this case. If they ever did find the body, like, you'd hope that would lead to a conviction for the sake of our family. All this, and then, like, it's I always kind of go back to the type of place it is, that it's just a small country place on the coast, like, and you have to think that somebody else in the town knows something or is helping the perpetrator hide or whatever.
I think it's very. I think Granahan's coming forward was a critical point, probably, that instigated the move by Gardaí, even without a body, to move to the DPP and say, we think we've now got enough to actually form a formal arrest and charge and case. Obviously they didn't foresee what was going to happen.
Like you said, there's no reason for him to come forward with that story.
No, absolutely not. No. And we talk an awful lot about the fact in a lot of these cases where people are reluctant to come forward, and sometimes do years after. I make no judgment on Martin Green. It took him, quite a number of years to come forward. 11 years. And I'm sure there are other, Michael Green, and it should be assigned to other people who have information on this case to also come forward. I'm thinking of Martin Early's wife. Early, if he is the person responsible for this, clearly has confided in other people. It's very rare that a person who is committed an act like this does not eventually at some point confide in somebody, either boastfully or secretly confide that they have a dark secret, or drunk or whatever. So it's hard not to believe there are people either in the UK or in Ireland, in the Killala community, who knew of the suspect X in this case, who know more than they are prepared to reveal to Gardaí at the moment. And all we can do is ask those people to consider the Collins family and come forward with that information.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Okay, look, that's the Sandra Collins case. Thank you for joining Kieran and I for this Radio Espial episode. We both hope there will be soon resolution for the Collins family. It's just one call of information away. That's the least a community can do for each other and the family of Sandra Collins. We're going to leave the final words to the Collins family. Thank you for joining me. Kieran and I will see you again soon in another episode.
Crowds gathered on the pier in Killala for the unveiling of the memorial plaque to Sandra.
Well, after the trial, it was said that whatever happened or may have happened at the pier. So then we just thought that it'd be nice to put a plaque down at the pier in memory of her. It's not now anything, or I wouldn't want anyone thinking that it's a substitute for a grave or anything like that, because it's not. It's lovely, and we go down to it and we lay flowers at it. But it's not the same. It's not the same as going back to the graveyard.
My dad and James are buried. This is where This is where we want her. At least we know that Mum and Dad and James are here. This is our destination. This is our end goal, is to have her here and to say, you know, goodbye Mum, bye James, bye Dad, and bye Sandra. That we know where she is.
That's always the last thing I say before I walk away from this grave. You know, please send her home, and this is where she belongs. It means giving Sandra back her dignity, but it also means giving me and David and Mary and Bridie back our lives, you know, and get on with our lives.
We see it as the light that we turn on the 4th of December to shine a light for her, and that maybe some year we'll have her back, have her home back.